She wouldn't let the black maintenance boy near her private jet. Minutes later, her hands trembled when she discovered why he refused to leave. The metal door of Phoenix Regional Airport's employee entrance creaked open at 4:45 a.m. Michael Thompson's work boots scraped against the concrete as he stepped into the dim hallway. His blue maintenance uniform hung loose on his thin frame, the fabric worn from countless washes. The night shift guards barely glanced up from their phones as he swiped his badge. Thompson Michael. Maintenance level 2, the scanner beeped. His mother's cough from this morning still echoed in his mind. He'd left her 2 pills and a glass of water before heading out. The arthritis was getting worse. "You here early again?" Dave, the morning security guard, called out as Michael passed the main desk. "Got extra hangars to clean today," Michael answered, adjusting his name tag. "Harrison jets coming in?" Dave snorted. "Rich folks and their private planes. Don't forget your place, kid." Michael's jaw tightened, but he kept walking. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as he made his way to the maintenance locker room. Inside, he grabbed his cleaning cart, checking that all supplies were stocked. The wheels squeaked as he pushed it toward Hangar 7. The early morning air hit his face as he exited the terminal. Stars still dotted the sky above the runway lights. His phone vibrated, a text from his mom. "Don't forget your lunch. Love you." He'd forgotten it. Again, the $12 in his pocket would have to do for food today. The Harrison hangar loomed ahead, its massive doors already open. 2 mechanics worked on a small Cessna in the corner, their voices echoing in the cavernous space. Neither looked up as Michael entered. Thompson, Mr. Reynolds, his supervisor, emerged from the office. "I need this place spotless before the Harrison jet arrives. Every inch, you understand?" "Yes, sir." Michael grabbed his mop. "And stay away from the aircraft unless specifically instructed. Last thing we need is—" Reynolds paused, looking Michael up and down. "Just stick to the floors and bathrooms." Michael knew what the pause meant. He'd heard 1,000 times before. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of cleaning solution and sweat. Michael worked methodically, starting from the back corner. The hangar slowly filled with more personnel: mechanics, fuel technicians, security staff. They moved around him like he was invisible. At 7:30 a.m., the radio crackled. "Harrison jet approaching in 30 minutes. Michael picked up his pace. As he moved closer to the private jet area, he noticed Sarah Harrison's regular pilot doing his pre-flight checks. The girl herself would probably arrive soon. He'd seen her a few times before, always hurrying past in designer clothes, never making eye contact. The maintenance cart bumped against something near the tail section of where the Harrison jet would park. Michael bent down to check for damage and froze. Behind a tool cabinet, partially hidden by shadows, sat a small black device with wires protruding from one end. His heart rate jumped. The device didn't look like any regular maintenance equipment he'd seen in his 8 months on the job. Red numbers glowed faintly on its surface. "Hey!" A sharp voice made him jump. "Step away from that area." A security guard approached, hand resting on his holster. Michael straightened up, hands raised slightly. "I was just cleaning, but I found—" "Save it. This area is restricted until the Harrison arrival." Back to the public spaces. Michael opened his mouth to explain, but caught the guard's hardening expression. The words died in his throat. He gripped his mop tighter, mind racing. The device was still there, hidden in the shadows. And Sarah Harrison's jet would park right next to it in less than 30 minutes. The guard stared him down, waiting. Michael's pulse pounded in his ears. If he reported it, would anyone even listen? And if they did, would they believe him? Or would he become the first suspect? A sleek black SUV pulled up outside the hangar. Sarah Harrison stepped out, her designer heels clicking on the concrete. She was headed straight for the jet that would park next to the device. Michael had to make a choice. Right now, the world narrowed to the hidden device, Sarah's approaching figure, and the weight of what he knew pressing down on his chest. 8 months of being invisible. 8 months of following orders. 8 months of knowing his place. But this wasn't about him anymore. Sarah was less than 50 feet from the hangar entrance. The device's red numbers continued their silent countdown behind the cabinet. And Michael Thompson, the invisible boy in the too big uniform, made his decision. Michael's feet moved before his brain caught up. He abandoned his cleaning cart and rushed toward his supervisor's office, heart hammering against his ribs. Mr. Reynolds sat at his desk, coffee cup in hand, scrolling through his phone. "Sir, I need to." "Thompson? What did I tell you about the restricted area?" Reynolds didn't look up. "There's something behind the tool cabinet. A device with wires." Reynolds set his phone down with a sharp click. "Did you touch anything?" "No, sir, but—" "Then get back to your assigned area. The Harrisons pay good money for privacy. You're not security, you're maintenance." Michael's palms grew sweaty. Through the office window, he could see Sarah Harrison entering the hangar, flanked by 2 assistants. Her long, dark hair swayed as she walked, completely unaware of what waited near her jet. "Mr. Reynolds, please. It looks like a— Enough." Reynolds stood up. "One more word about this, and you'll be looking for a new job. Your mother needs those medical benefits, doesn't she?" The mention of his mother hit like a punch to the gut. But the image of that device, its red numbers counting down, pushed him forward. "I think it's a bomb," Michael blurted out. Reynolds' face reddened. "Get out. Now." "Sir, securities." Reynolds bellowed. "Escort Thompson out of the hangar." The same guard from earlier appeared at the door. "Problem? Remove him from the premises. And call HR." Michael backed away, hands raised. "Just check behind the cabinet. Please." Next to where the Harrison jet parks, the guard grabbed his arm. "Let's go, kid." Michael pulled free. Through the windows, he saw a ground crew directing Sarah's jet into position, right next to the hidden device. His chest tightened. "The girl's going to die if you don't listen," he shouted. Heads turned. Sarah herself paused at the jet's stairs, looking over. The guard reached for his radio. "We got a situation in Hangar 7. Thompson's causing a disturbance." More security personnel appeared at the hangar entrance. Michael saw his job slipping away, saw his mother's medicine running out, saw their small apartment's lights being shut off. But he also saw that device, and he couldn't unsee it. He bolted. "Hey, stop!" Michael sprinted past the cleaning cart, past the mechanics who now stared openly, past Mr. Reynolds who shouted something about calling the police. His legs pumped harder than they ever had during high school track. Sarah stood frozen on the jet stairs, one hand on the railing. Her eyes widened as he approached. "Get away from her!" Security shouted behind him. "There's a bomb!" Michael yelled, pointing at the cabinet. "Right there!" Sarah's face drained of color. Her assistants moved to shield her. "Don't move!" A guard's voice rang out. "Hands where we can see them!" Michael slowly raised his hands, breathing hard. "Look behind the cabinet. Please. I'm just trying to. On your knees." "Sarah, don't get on that jet," Michael pleaded, dropping to his knees. "There's a device with wires and numbers. Red numbers. Counting down." She hesitated on the stairs, looking between Michael and the security team now surrounding him. "Miss Harrison, please step away from the aircraft," a guard instructed. "We'll handle this." "Check it," Sarah said suddenly. Everyone turned to her. "What?" The head of security frowned. "Check behind the cabinet. Now." Her voice carried the weight of someone used to being obeyed. 2 guards moved cautiously toward the area Michael had indicated, while others kept their weapons trained on him. His knees hurt against the concrete, but he didn't dare move. "Miss Harrison, this is just a disgruntled," Reynolds began. "Shut up," Sarah snapped. She descended the stairs, eyes fixed on Michael. "You're sure about what you saw?" "Yes." Sweat dripped down his back. "I clean this hangar every day. That device wasn't here yesterday." The guards reached the cabinet. One covered the area while the other carefully looked behind it. Time stretched like rubber. Michael could hear his own heartbeat, the distant sound of planes taking off, the scuff of boots on concrete. Then, holy shit, the guard's voice cracked. "We need bomb squad in here now. Clear the hangar. Everyone out." The next few minutes exploded into chaos. Alarms blared. People ran. Sarah was whisked away by her security detail. Someone grabbed Michael roughly by the arm and dragged him outside. The morning sun hit his face as they emerged. His uniform was soaked with sweat. In the distance, sirens wailed. "Don't move," a guard ordered, pushing him against a wall. Through the commotion, he caught a glimpse of Sarah being hurried toward a secure building. For a brief moment, their eyes met. She looked back at him with an expression he couldn't read. Then bomb squad vehicles screamed into view, and everything changed again. Men in heavy protective gear rushed past. Radio chatter filled the air. Michael stood against the wall, still under guard, watching the morning dissolve into flashing lights and urgent voices. His phone buzzed in his pocket, probably his mother wondering why he wasn't answering her texts. He couldn't reach it with his hands still raised. "The device is active," someone called out. "Repeat, we have an active explosive device." The words hung in the air like smoke. Michael's legs trembled. He'd been right. But as the reality of what he'd prevented sank in, a new fear gripped him. What happened now? To him, the guard's radio crackled. "Thompson needs to be taken in for questioning. Now!" As they led him away, Michael caught one last glimpse of the Harrison jet through the hangar doors. In another timeline, another version of this morning, that plane would have taken off. With Sarah inside, the thought made his knees weak. "Keep moving," the guard ordered. Michael walked, each step taking him further from everything he knew. The job he'd probably just lost. The mother who depended on him. The life that, until 40 minutes ago, had made some kind of sense. But he walked straight, head up, because for the first time since he could remember, being invisible wasn't an option anymore. The security office door slammed behind Michael. Two guards flanked him while a third sat behind a metal desk, shuffling papers. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, making the windowless room feel smaller than it was. "Sit," the seated guard ordered. Michael lowered himself into a hard plastic chair. His maintenance badge had been confiscated, along with his phone and wallet. Name and position. The guard didn't look up. "Michael Thompson, maintenance level 2. How long have you worked here?" 8 months. The guard finally looked at him. "And what made you decide to breach security protocols today?" Before Michael could answer, the door burst open. Sarah Harrison stood in the doorway, her face flushed. A security detail hovered anxiously behind her. "Miss Harrison, you can't be here," one of the guards started. The bomb squad confirmed it. She cut him off. "It was real. A real bomb." She turned to Michael. "You saved my life." The room fell silent. Michael's throat went dry. Sarah stepped inside, despite the protests of her security team. "I want to know exactly what happened." From him, the guard at the desk straightened. "Miss Harrison, this is an active investigation. We need to." "My father is on his way," she interrupted. "He'll want answers too. So let's start with the obvious question." She faced Michael directly. "How did you find it?" Michael took a deep breath. "I was cleaning near the tool cabinet. My cart bumped it, and I saw something behind it. A black box with wires. Red numbers. And you tried to report it?" "To my supervisor first. Mr. Reynolds." "He wouldn't listen?" Sarah's jaw tightened. "Get Reynolds in here. Now." One of the guards hurried out. Sarah pulled up a chair and sat across from Michael, ignoring the security team's discomfort. "Keep going," she said. Michael's words came faster now. "No one would check. They just saw." He gestured to himself, to his maintenance uniform, to his skin. "They didn't want to listen. And you were about to board, and those numbers were counting down, and I couldn't let it happen. So you ran past armed security to warn me." "Yes. You could have been shot." Michael met her eyes. "You could have been killed." The door opened again. Reynolds entered, his face pale. Behind him came a tall man in an expensive suit, William Harrison himself. Sarah stood immediately. "Daddy, I heard." Mr. Harrison's voice filled the room. He looked at Michael for a long moment, then at Reynolds. "You ignored this young man's warning?" Reynolds sputtered. "Sir, we get dozens of false alarms. A false alarm that the bomb squad just confirmed was a sophisticated explosive device." Harrison's tone could have frozen fire. "A device that would have killed my daughter? I didn't think." "No, you didn't." Harrison turned to the security team. "I want every camera recording from this morning, every radio transmission, every entry log, and I want to know who had access to that hangar in the last 24 hours. The guards scrambled to comply. Harrison focused on Michael again. "Stand up, son." Michael rose slowly, his legs shaky. "Tell me everything. From the beginning." So Michael did. He described his morning routine, finding the device, trying to report it, making the decision to act. As he spoke, more people filed into the room: airport management, FBI agents, police officers. They all listened. When he finished, Harrison nodded once. You understand you broke numerous security protocols? Yes, sir. You violated restricted areas, disobeyed direct orders, and caused a major security incident. Michael's heart sank. Yes, sir. Good. Harrison's face softened slightly. Because that's exactly what you should have done. That's what anyone should do when they see a threat and get ignored. He turned to the airport officials. This young man just prevented what could have been a tragedy. I expect that to be reflected in your report. Of course, Mr. Harrison, one of them stammered. And Reynolds? Harrison's voice hardened again. You're fired. Clear out your office. Reynolds slunk out without a word. Sarah, who had been quiet during Michael's retelling, stepped forward. I didn't even know your name before today, she said softly. You've cleaned our hangar for months, and I never once. Most people don't, Michael replied. Well, I know it now. She held out her hand. Thank you, Michael Thompson. He shook it, aware of every eye in the room on them. Her grip was firm, her gaze direct. Harrison cleared his throat. The FBI will need to continue their investigation, but I think we can conduct it somewhere more comfortable than this office. He gestured to the door. Shall we? As they left the security office, Michael felt the weight of the morning fully for the first time. His phone and belongings were returned. The first message he saw was from his mother. Are you okay? The news is showing something happening at the airport. His thumbs hovered over the phone screen. How could he even begin to explain? Michael. Sarah called from down the hall. Are you coming? He looked up. Sarah and her father waited with a team of agents and airport officials. Behind them, through the terminal windows, he could see news vans arriving in the parking lot. The invisible maintenance boy was about to become very visible indeed. Michael typed a quick message to his mother. I'm okay. Something big happened. We'll explain everything soon. Love you. Then he walked toward the Harrisons, toward the investigation, toward whatever came next. The morning sun streamed through the terminal windows, casting long shadows behind him. It was barely 9 a.m., and Michael Thompson's life had already changed forever. The FBI's temporary command center had been set up in a converted conference room. Michael sat at a long table, a paper cup of untouched coffee in front of him. Two agents faced him. Agent Torres, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, and Agent Brooks, a younger man who hadn't stopped typing on his laptop since they began. Walk us through it one more time, Torres said. Every detail. Michael's throat felt raw from repeating the story. I've told you everything. Tell us again. He sighed, glancing at the wall clock. 10:47 a.m. His mother's text had grown increasingly worried. I was cleaning near the tool cabinet. My cart bumped it. I saw the device. And you're sure you'd never seen it before? I clean that hangar every day. I know every inch of it. Brooks looked up from his laptop. You have quite a view of the private jets from there. The implication hung in the air. Michael's hands clenched under the table. If you're suggesting I had something to do with... The door opened. William Harrison strode in, followed by a man in an expensive suit. This interview is over, the suited man announced. I'm David Chun, Mr. Thompson's attorney. Michael blinked. My what? The Harrisons have retained me to represent you, Chun explained, placing a business card on the table. And my client has already provided a full statement. Torres frowned. We're not finished. Yes, you are? Harrison's voice carried the same authority it had in the security office. Michael saved my daughter's life. He's a hero, not a suspect. Sir, we have to explore all possibilities, then explore them somewhere else. Mr. Thompson has cooperated fully. Now he needs rest. Chun gathered Michael's coffee cup and stood. We're done here. Outside the conference room, Michael found his voice. Mr. Harrison, I can't afford a lawyer. You don't have to. Harrison guided them down the hallway. It's the least I can do. They passed windows overlooking the tarmac. The bomb squad was still processing the hangar. News helicopters circled overhead. Sir, Michael started, my mother is being picked up as we speak. A car service will bring her here. Michael stopped walking. How did you? I made some calls. Harrison turned to face him. Michael, you did something extraordinary today. You saw a threat. You tried to report it properly, and when that failed, you acted anyway. At great personal risk, he paused. That kind of courage deserves support. Before Michael could respond, commotion erupted at the end of the hallway. Sarah appeared, arguing with her security detail. I don't need 6 guards to walk down a hallway. Her voice carried clearly. The threat's been contained, hasn't it? She spotted them and headed over, guards trailing behind like anxious ducklings. Michael. She smiled, then frowned at his expression. Are you okay? What did the FBI say? They think I might be involved, he said quietly. Sarah's face darkened. That's ridiculous. Dad. Already handled, Harrison assured her. David here will make sure Michael's rights are protected. Chen nodded. The FBI's just following procedure. They'll find nothing because there's nothing to find. A young agent hurried up to their group. Mr. Harrison? We need you in the command center. You too, Miss Harrison. They're reviewing the security footage. Sarah touched Michael's arm. Come with us? You should see this too. The command center occupied a larger conference room. Monitors covered one wall, showing different camera angles of the hangar. Airport officials, FBI agents, and security personnel crowded around them. On the main screen, security footage played. Michael watched himself cleaning, finding the device, running to report it. The cameras caught everything. Reynolds dismissing him, the guards threatening him, his desperate sprint to warn Sarah. Look at that timestamp, an FBI analyst pointed. From discovery to action, less than 15 minutes. No calls, no messages sent. If he was involved, he'd have contacted someone. And here, another agent added, he tries to report it twice before taking direct action. Torres stood at the back, arms crossed. What about hangar access logs? Only authorized personnel in the last 24 hours, someone replied. But there's a gap in the camera footage from 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. System glitch. Or deliberate, Harrison mused. Focus on that time frame. Who had access? Who called in sick today? Any recent terminations? Michael watched the footage of himself being detained, Sarah being evacuated, the bomb squad arriving. It felt surreal, like watching a movie about someone else. A phone rang. Agent Torres answered, listened, then hung up. Bomb's been fully analyzed, she announced. Professional job. Military-grade components. Definitely not amateur hour. The room fell silent. Harrison's jaw tightened. This was a targeted attack, he said quietly. Looks that way, Torres agreed. Mr. Harrison, we'll need to discuss your recent business dealings. Any threats? A commotion outside interrupted her. Michael heard a familiar voice. Let me through. That's my son in there. He turned as his mother burst into the room, a security guard trying to stop her. Mom! She rushed to him, wrapping him in a fierce hug. Her work uniform smelled of cleaning products just like his. I saw the news, she whispered. My baby boy. My brave, stupid, wonderful boy. Michael held her tight, feeling her trembling. When they separated, she wiped her eyes and faced the room with dignity. Mrs. Thompson, Harrison stepped forward. Your son is an extraordinary young man. I know. She squeezed Michael's hand. But he's still my boy. And someone just tried to hurt him. Actually, Sarah spoke up. He saved me. The bomb was meant for our jet. Michael's mother looked between Sarah and her son. Understanding dawned in her eyes. The Harrison girl, she breathed. Oh, Michael. Torres cleared her throat. Mrs. Thompson, we'll need to arrange protection for you both until we identify the perpetrators. Already done, Harrison said. I've arranged secure accommodation and private security. Sir, Michael started to protest. Non-negotiable. Harrison's tone brooked no argument. You're both under my family's protection now. On the monitors, the footage continued to play. Michael watched his past self making choices that had brought him here. To this room full of FBI agents and millionaires, with his mother holding his hand and Sarah Harrison looking at him like he mattered. The invisible boy had become impossible to ignore. Agent Torres, a technician, called out. We've got something. 3 weeks ago, a maintenance badge was reported lost. But the system shows it was used last night, during the camera blackout. The investigation was just beginning. But as Michael stood there, between his mother and the Harrisons, he knew one thing for certain. His life would never be invisible again. The bomb squad's lead technician laid out photos on the conference room table. Each image showed the device from different angles: black case, red digital display, mesh of colored wires. Michael's stomach turned just looking at them. Professional work, the technician said, pointing to specific components. Timer, remote trigger capability, shaped charge designed to breach the fuel tank. He looked at Harrison. Whoever did this wanted to make sure the plane went down. Sarah sat next to Michael, her face pale. How much time was left? 43 minutes from when it was discovered. The technician shuffled through more photos. Would have detonated at cruising altitude. Michael's mother gripped his hand tighter. They'd moved everyone to a secure conference room while the investigation continued. Outside, the press had gathered in force. Agent Torres spread out surveillance photos from the camera blackout period. This is our suspect. Male, approximately 6 feet tall, wearing maintenance uniform and using a stolen ID badge. The grainy images showed a figure moving through the darkened hangar. Face is never clear, Brooks added. He knew where the cameras were. Inside job? Harrison asked. Looking that way, Torres tapped one photo. See how he moves through the space? Familiar with the layout. Probably current or former employee. Sarah leaned forward. What about Reynolds? He tried awfully hard to ignore Michael's warning. Being questioned now, Brooks said. But initial background check shows massive gambling debts. Could be relevant. A knock at the door. Chun entered with a stack of papers. Preliminary statements are ready, he announced. Michael, we should review yours first. Before they could move to another room, alarms blared through the building. Security personnel rushed to the doors. Bomb threat called in. Someone shouted, Everyone stay put. Michael's chest tightened. Sarah grabbed his arm. Secondary attack. Harrison demanded. Likely a distraction. Torres replied, already on her radio. They're trying to flush us out into the open. Guards took positions at windows and doors. Michael pulled his mother closer, scanning for threats. The alarms continued to wail. All units respond, a voice crackled over security radios. Suspicious package found in south parking structure. Harrison's private security team moved him and Sarah to an inner corner, away from windows. Michael started to follow, but Torres stopped him. Wait, she studied his face. You recognized something in those surveillance photos, didn't you? Michael hesitated. The figure's movements had seemed familiar. But the way he walks, he said slowly. I've seen it before. In the hangar. Torres motioned for Brooks to take notes. Who? She pressed. Marcus Winters. Senior maintenance supervisor. He trained me when I started. Michael's mouth went dry. He stopped showing up for work 2 weeks ago. Sarah broke away from her security detail. The same time the ID badge was reported stolen, pull everything on Winters, Torres ordered. Employment records, financials, known associates. Brooks typed rapidly. Got it. Marcus Winters, age 47. 20 years with the airport. And, interesting, multiple complaints about being passed over for promotion. Last one filed after Harrison Aviation contracted with a different maintenance company for their private fleet. Harrison's expression darkened. I remember. His bid was significantly higher than the competition. Company he tried to form to handle the contract. Brooks continued reading. Went bankrupt 3 months ago. He lost everything. Location? Torres demanded. No current address. But property records show. He owns a storage unit 10 miles from here. The alarms suddenly cut off, leaving a ringing silence. Parking structure threat was a dummy device, someone reported. Decoy. Torres was already moving. I want that storage unit raided. Now. And put out an APB on Winters. Wait. Sarah stepped forward. The bomb on our plane. It wasn't about money, was it? It was about reputation, about being seen. Michael felt cold realization spread through him. He hated being invisible too. Harrison pulled out his phone. I'm calling in additional security for both families. Until Winters is found, a commotion erupted in the hallway. Reynolds was being led past in handcuffs, 2 FBI agents flanking him. He talked, Brooks announced, reading from his laptop. Winters paid him $10,000 to ignore any security concerns this morning. Said he'd know when. Michael's mother spoke up for the first time in hours. That man was going to let my son die to cover up a bomb? Her voice shook with rage. Michael had never heard that tone from her before. Mrs. Thompson, Harrison said quietly. I promise you, everyone involved in this will face justice. Sarah moved to stand beside Michael. We should get them out of here. Somewhere secure until Winters is caught. Already arranged, Harrison nodded. Private security at a secure location. Michael, your mother's medical care will be fully covered. Take whatever time you need. Michael started to protest, but Sarah cut him off. You saved my life, she said firmly. Let us help keep you safe. Through the windows, Michael could see the sun setting. Had it really been only one day? His entire world had shifted on its axis. His phone buzzed, another news alert. His name was everywhere now, his story spreading across social media. The invisible maintenance boy who saved a millionaire's daughter. But that wasn't quite right. He hadn't saved her because she was rich. He'd saved her because she was human, because it was right, because in that moment he'd seen past all the barriers of class and color and position straight to the simple truth. A life is a life. Michael, his mother touched his arm. You okay, baby? He looked around the room. At Sarah, who now knew his name. At Harrison, who now saw his worth. At Torres, who now trusted his insight. At his mother, who had always seen him clearly. Yeah, he said. I'm okay. Outside, the hunt for Winters was beginning. Somewhere in the gathering darkness, a man who had tried to turn invisibility into vengeance was running out of places to hide. But in this room, Michael Thompson stood in plain sight, finally and fully seen. The safe house was a luxury apartment in downtown Phoenix, 30 stories up with bulletproof windows. Michael stood at the glass, watching police helicopters circle in the distance. The hunt for Marcus Winters had entered its 6th hour. Any news? Sarah asked, joining him at the window. They found bomb-making materials at his storage unit, Michael replied. But he's gone. The apartment's living room had become a makeshift command center. FBI agents monitored police channels while Harrison's security team guarded the entrances. Michael's mother had finally fallen asleep in one of the bedrooms after hours of worry. Mr. Thompson, Agent Torres approached with her laptop. We need to review something. Security footage played on the screen. The camera angle showed the hangar from 3 weeks ago. Michael recognized Winters doing his normal rounds, but something was different about his movements. Watch his interaction with Reynolds, Torres instructed. The two men spoke briefly near the Harrison jet's usual parking spot. Money changed hands. This was when they started planning, Torres explained. Reynolds just confessed everything. Sarah moved closer to see. Play it again. They watched Reynolds pocket the cash, then gesture toward the tool cabinet, the same one that would later hide the bomb. He's showing him the blind spot in the camera coverage, Michael realized. Exactly. Torres closed the laptop. Reynolds claims he thought it was just about smuggling, that he didn't know about the bomb until this morning, but he still tried to silence Michael, Sarah said, anger edging her voice. A commotion at the apartment door drew their attention. David Chin entered, followed by 2 more FBI agents. Reynolds is ready to talk more, Chin announced. But he wants a deal. Harrison emerged from his makeshift office. No deals? Sir, one of the agents started. If he can help us locate Winters, he conspired to murder my daughter. Harrison's voice was ice. He took money to look the other way. He threatened a young man who tried to prevent it. No. Deals? Chun cleared his throat. Actually, he's asking to speak with Michael. The room fell silent. Michael felt all eyes turned to him. Why? He asked. Says there's something you need to know. About Winters. About why he really chose the Harrison jet. Sarah touched Michael's arm. You don't have to. If it helps catch him. Michael straightened his shoulders. I'll do it. Torres shook her head. Too risky. We can't take you back to the airport. Video call, Chin suggested. Secure line. Reynolds stays in custody. 20 minutes later, they had it set up. Reynolds' face filled a laptop screen, his orange jumpsuit bright against the interrogation room wall. Michael. Reynolds looked older than he had that morning. I'm sorry. Save it, Torres cut in. Talk about Winters. Reynolds swallowed hard. It wasn't just about the maintenance contract. Or the money. It was about Michael. Michael felt his pulse quicken. What? The day Harrison Aviation rejected his company's bid. Winters saw you cleaning their jet. Saw how they ignored you. How everyone did. Reynolds wouldn't meet Michael's eyes. It made him angry. Not for you. For himself. He said if a black kid could accept being invisible, what did that make him? Sarah's hand found Michael's. He gripped it without thinking. He watched you for weeks, Reynolds continued. How you worked hard. Never complained. He hated that. Said you were living proof that good work means nothing if you're the wrong person. So he chose the Harrison jet because of me? Michael's voice shook slightly. He wanted you to find it. Wanted you to try to report it. Knew no one would listen. Reynolds finally looked up. When you ran toward the jet instead of away, you ruined his whole point. Michael felt Sarah's hand tighten around his. Where is he? Torres demanded. Don't know exactly. But Reynolds hesitated. He has a brother. Works maintenance at Sky Harbor. The other airport. Torres was already on her radio. I want everything on Winter's brother. Now. He'll go after Michael again, Reynolds said quietly. Not to kill him. To prove him wrong. To show everyone that being invisible is all some people deserve. Harrison stepped into frame. But Michael isn't invisible anymore. And neither are you, Reynolds. You'll both be remembered. Him as a hero, you as a coward. They cut the video feed. Michael stayed rooted to the spot, processing everything. Hey, Sarah tugged his hand. You okay? He wanted me to fail, Michael said slowly. To prove that someone like me couldn't make a difference. But you did make a difference, Sarah insisted. You proved him wrong in every way. Torres, radio crackled. Activity at Sky Harbor. Security camera picked up Winters 10 minutes ago. That's only 15 miles from here, Chin noted. He's not running, Michael realized. He's planning something else? Harrison was already mobilizing his security team. Double the guard detail. No one gets in or out without authorization. Sir, a guard called from the door. Press is gathering downstairs. Someone leaked the safe house location. We need to move, Torres decided. Now. No. Michael faced them all. That's what he wants. To keep us running. Keep us reactive. Sarah studied his face. You have an idea? Maybe? Michael turned to Torres. You said he's watching the press coverage? Obsessively, according to his brother. Then let's give him something to watch. Michael felt a plan forming. Something that proves him wrong about being invisible. Harrison caught on first. A press conference? With me. Michael nodded. In public. Showing everyone that someone like me can make a difference. Can be seen. Absolutely not, Chin protested. The risk is worth it, Michael finished. Because he won't be able to resist proving me wrong. Sarah stepped forward. I'll do it too. Both of us, telling the real story. It could work, Torres said slowly. Draw him out on our terms. Harrison looked between Michael and his daughter. Your choice. Both of you. Michael thought of his mother sleeping in the next room. Of all the invisible people who kept the world running. Of Marcus Winters, who had let invisibility poison him. Schedule it, he said firmly. Tomorrow morning. Let's show him what being seen really means. Outside, the helicopters kept circling. But for the first time since the bomb was discovered, Michael felt in control. Winters had tried to use him to prove darkness. Instead, Michael would use Winters to prove light. The invisible boy was about to step into the spotlight. On his own terms, the evening news played silently on the safe house's massive TV. Michael watched his own face flash across the screen. Photos from his employee ID, clips from the airport security footage, his name in bold letters beneath headlines about the bomb plot. You should eat something, his mother said, placing a sandwich next to him. The Harrisons' private chef had prepared dinner, but Michael couldn't stomach more than a few bites. Tomorrow's press conference weighed heavily on his mind. What if this makes things worse? He asked quietly. His mother sat beside him on the plush couch. Baby, things were already worse. A man put a bomb on a plane. You stopped him. That's the truth. And the truth needs telling. The apartment's elevator dinged. Sarah emerged with two FBI agents, returning from a security briefing downstairs. They found more evidence at Winter's brother's house, she announced. Detailed plans. Photos of the airport. Of you? Michael's stomach turned. How long was he watching me? Months. Sarah settled into an armchair across from them. He had your whole schedule mapped out. Knew exactly when you'd find the bomb. But he didn't know you, Michael's mother added. Didn't know you'd do the right thing no matter what. A guard appeared from the security room. "Mr. Thompson, Agent Torres needs you to review your statement for tomorrow." Michael stood, legs stiff from sitting too long. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, he could see news vans gathered at the building's entrance 30 stories below. The command center had been set up in what was probably meant to be a dining room. Torres sat surrounded by monitors, each showing different surveillance feeds from around the city. "Any sign of him?" Michael asked. "Not since Sky Harbor." She handed him a document. "Your statement for tomorrow." Chin reviewed it already. Michael scanned the carefully worded paragraphs. His story, sanitized and simplified for public consumption. "This isn't right," he said. Torres looked up. "What do you mean?" "It's too clean. Too perfect." Michael set the papers down. "It doesn't tell the real story. The real story could compromise the investigation. The real story is what matters." Michael's voice strengthened. "About being invisible. About what that does to people. Some of us fight through it. Some of us let it break us. That's what Winters needs to hear." "Michael," Torres started. "He's right." Sarah stood in the doorway. "The sanitized version won't draw him out. He needs to hear the truth." Torres rubbed her temples. "The press conference is in 12 hours. If we're changing the statement, I'll write it myself," Michael said. "Let me tell it my way." A moment of silence. Then Torres nodded. "Run it by Chan when you're done." Michael returned to the living room, found a laptop, and began to write. The words came easily now, flowing from a place of understanding he hadn't known he possessed. Hours passed. His mother brought him coffee. Sarah read over his shoulder occasionally, offering quiet encouragement. Outside, the city lights glittered like stars. Just before midnight, he finished. Chun reviewed it, made minimal changes. Even Harrison, reading it in his temporary office, simply nodded and said, "The truth usually works best." Michael finally tried to sleep around 2 a.m., but rest wouldn't come. He stood at his window, watching the city below. Somewhere out there, Marcus Winters was watching too. Planning. Waiting. A soft knock at his door. Sarah entered, also still dressed. "Can't sleep either?" she asked. Michael shook his head. "I kept thinking," she said, joining him at the window, "about all the times I walked past you in that hangar. Never once looked at you properly. Never wondered about your story. Most people don't. That's the problem, isn't it? The thing Winters couldn't handle, but you could." Michael turned to face her. "What's that?" "Being unseen doesn't make you invisible. Not unless you let it." A companionable silence fell between them. Below, camera flashes occasionally burst like lightning as photographers waited for movement at the building's entrance. "Thank you," Sarah said suddenly. "Not just for saving my life. For seeing me as a person worth saving, not just a rich man's daughter." "Everyone's worth saving," Michael replied. "That's kind of the point." She smiled. "Maybe that's what your speech should end with tomorrow." "Maybe it should." They stayed at the window a while longer, watching the city sleep. Finally, Sarah headed for the door. "Get some rest, Michael Thompson. Tomorrow you become very, very visible." After she left, Michael lay on the too-soft bed, staring at the ceiling. His phone buzzed with another news alert about the bomb plot. About him. For so long, he'd accepted his invisibility as the price of survival. Keep your head down. Do your work. Don't make waves. But tomorrow he would make waves. Big ones. Because sometimes being seen wasn't about ego or pride or revenge. Sometimes it was about showing others like him that they didn't have to accept the shadows. His mother's gentle snores drifted through the wall from the next room. Down the hall, he could hear agents changing shifts, radios crackling with updates. Everyone waiting for tomorrow. Just before sleep finally took him, Michael remembered something his father had said before leaving. "The world doesn't see people like us, son." Tomorrow, Michael would prove him wrong, too. The world would see him, would see all the invisible people who kept it running. And Marcus Winters would see exactly how wrong he'd been about what invisibility meant. Michael Thompson drifted off, his speech clutched in his hand, his mother's strength in his heart, and the weight of tomorrow's truth waiting to be told. Dawn broke over Phoenix with news helicopters already circling the building. Michael stood in front of a mirror, adjusting the tie Harrison's staff had provided. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. "Here, let me," his mother said, stepping in to fix the knot. "Your father never could tie these things either." The mention of his father hung in the air. Michael caught his mother's reflection in the mirror. The proud smile, the worried eyes. "Mom," he started. "Don't you dare apologize." She cut him off. "You did the right thing. You're about to do the right thing again." A knock at the door. Agent Torres entered, already wired with a radio earpiece. 15 minutes, she announced. Security's ready downstairs. Michael nodded, taking one last look in the mirror. The suit fit perfectly. Harrison's tailor had worked late into the night. The scared maintenance boy from yesterday was gone, replaced by someone who looked important. "The press is already gathering," Torres continued. "We have snipers on surrounding buildings, plainclothes officers in the crowd. If Winters shows, he'll show," Michael said. "Maybe not there, but he'll be watching." Sarah appeared in the doorway, wearing a simple but elegant blue dress. "Ready?" "Almost." Michael turned to his mother. "You should stay up here." "Like hell?" She straightened his collar. "My son's about to tell the world his truth. I'm going to be right there." Torres didn't argue. Everyone had learned not to argue with Mrs. Thompson. The elevator ride down was silent. Michael felt the speech cards in his pocket, but he knew he wouldn't need them. The truth didn't need notes. The building's private conference room had been transformed. A podium faced rows of chairs filled with reporters. Cameras lined the back wall. FBI agents and Harrison security dotted the perimeter. William Harrison met them at the side entrance. "Everything's ready. Michael, you'll speak first, then Sarah. I'll handle questions." "Sir," Michael said, "thank you for." Harrison waved him off. "You saved my daughter. Everything else is just details." Torres touched her earpiece, listening. "We're clear to start." "Michael." He took a deep breath and stepped toward the podium. Camera shutters clicked rapidly. Microphones pointed at him like fingers. The lights were bright, but not as bright as the morning sun had been in the hangar yesterday when he'd made his choice to act. "My name is Michael Thompson," he began. "Yesterday morning, I was invisible." The room fell silent. "I was invisible because that's what society expected. A young black man cleaning floors, doing the work no one thinks about until it doesn't get done. I accepted that invisibility because it felt safer than being seen." He found his mother's face in the crowd. She nodded encouragingly. "But yesterday, I found something that forced me to choose between staying invisible and doing what's right. I found a bomb, planted by a man who let invisibility turn him bitter. A man who thought he could use my invisibility to help him commit murder." Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled frantically. "Marcus Winters," Michael continued, looking directly into the main news camera, "thought he knew me. Thought he knew what being invisible meant. He thought it meant being powerless. Being less. He was wrong." Sarah stepped up beside him at the podium. "Being unseen doesn't make you invisible unless you choose to disappear. Yesterday, I chose to be seen, to act, to save a life not because of who that life belonged to, but because every life has value, even the invisible ones." His voice strengthened. "To everyone who feels invisible, the cleaners, the maintenance workers, the people who keep the world running behind the scenes, you matter. Your work matters. Your lives matter. Don't let anyone use your invisibility as a weapon. Use it as strength." The room erupted with questions. Reporters shouted his name. But Michael had one more thing to say. "And to Marcus Winters, you tried to use me to prove darkness. Instead, I'm going to use you to prove light. Turn yourself in. Show that even the bitter can choose to be better." Sarah took the microphone. "Michael saved my life by refusing to stay invisible. Now it's time for all of us to see the people we've been trained to overlook." Questions flew. Cameras flashed. But Michael barely heard them. Because at that moment, Torres' radio crackled. "Movement at the west entrance," a voice reported. Subject matching Winters' description. Harrison's security moved instantly, surrounding Michael and Sarah. Torres barked orders into her radio. "Ladies and gentlemen," Harrison addressed the press, "we need to end this conference immediately. Please exit through the main doors." Controlled chaos erupted as reporters were herded out. Michael's mother was whisked to a secure room. But Michael stood his ground at the podium. "He's here," he said quietly to Torres. "Multiple units converging," her radio answered. "Subject is armed." "Repeat, subject is armed." Sarah grabbed Michael's arm. We need to move? No. Michael faced the west entrance. He needs to hear this. The doors burst open. Marcus Winters stood there, wild-eyed and desperate, a gun shaking in his hand. FBI agents drew weapons. Security shouted orders. But Michael just looked at his former supervisor, really looked at him. Saw the pain, the bitterness, the years of swallowed pride that had turned toxic. Hello, Marcus, he said calmly into the still live microphone. I see you. The world seemed to hold its breath. In that moment, two invisible men faced each other across a room full of cameras. One had chosen light. One had chosen darkness. Now, they would see which choice was stronger. Marcus Winters' hand trembled as he pointed the gun. FBI agents held their positions, weapons trained, waiting for the slightest wrong move. You ruined everything, Winters said, his voice cracking. You were supposed to prove me right. Michael stayed at the podium, oddly calm. About what? That being invisible makes us worthless? They never saw us? Winters shouted. All those years of work, of doing everything right, and they looked right through us. No, Michael replied. You let them look through you. I chose to be seen. Sarah stood her ground beside Michael, despite security trying to pull her back. He saved my life because he saw me as a person, not a target, not a symbol. Winters' gun wavered. You don't understand. None of you understand what it's like. To be ignored. Michael cut in. To work twice as hard for half the recognition? To know that some people will never see past your uniform or your skin? He stepped away from the podium. I understand perfectly. Then why? Winters demanded. Why save her? Why not let them all see what happens when they ignore us? Because that would prove them right. Michael took another step forward. FBI agents tensed. It would prove that being invisible makes you less. Makes you bitter. Makes you cruel. Tears streaked down Winters' face. They have to see us. They're seeing us right now. Michael gestured to the news cameras still rolling. The whole world is watching. But what are they seeing? A man so broken by invisibility that he'd murder an innocent girl? Or someone who refused to let invisibility break him? Winters' gun arm dropped slightly. I just wanted to matter. Michael was close enough now to see the exhaustion in Winters' eyes. You always mattered. We all matter. But you can't prove that through destruction. It's too late, Winters whispered. No. Michael held out his hand. It's not too late to be seen. To be better. To show everyone that invisibility is a choice, not a sentence. The conference room held its breath. Sarah watched, heart pounding. FBI agents kept their weapons ready. And Marcus Winters stood frozen, teetering between darkness and light. Then, slowly, the gun lowered. I'm so tired, Winters said. So tired of not being seen. I see you, Michael replied softly. I see your pain, your anger, your worth. Now, let everyone else see your courage. The gun clattered to the floor. FBI agents rushed forward as Winters sank to his knees. It was over in seconds. Winters in custody, the room secured, the immediate danger past. But something bigger had just happened. Something that the still-rolling cameras had captured. Something that would be replayed on news stations across the country. The moment when invisibility lost its power. Hours later, after the statements and paperwork, after his mother's fierce hugs and Sarah's quiet thanks, after Harrison's proud handshake and Torres' relieved smile, Michael stood in the empty conference room. Ready to go? Sarah asked from the doorway. He turned. Where? To see your new office. She smiled. Dad's creating a position. Head of security operations training. Teaching others to see what you saw. I can't accept. Yes, you can. She stepped closer. Because it's not charity. It's recognition of your worth. Of everyone's worth. Michael thought about it. About all the invisible people who kept the world turning. About how one person choosing to be seen could help others find their light. Okay, he said, but I have one condition. Name it. The maintenance staff gets included in all security briefings. No more invisible workers. Sarah grinned. Already done. Dad's implementing new protocols across all Harrison facilities. They walked out together, past the podium where truth had faced down darkness, past the spot where Winters had chosen redemption over revenge. Michael's phone buzzed, a text from his mother. Channel 7 wants an interview. And your medical school application essay just wrote itself. He smiled. The invisible boy had found his voice, his purpose, his place in the visible world. Outside, the sun was setting over Phoenix. News vans still lined the street, but Michael barely noticed them now. He was too busy seeing everything else. The janitor nodding hello, the parking attendant waving, the security guard offering a respectful salute. You change things, Sarah said quietly. Not just for yourself. We all change things, Michael replied, by choosing to see each other. Really see each other. His new security badge felt solid in his pocket. Head of Operations Training. A position created not because he'd saved a life, but because he'd shown everyone how to truly see. Tomorrow, he'd start his new job. He'd help implement protocols that treated every worker as essential, visible, worthy. He'd teach security teams to look past uniforms and assumptions to see potential threats and potential heroes. But tonight, he had one more thing to do. Need a ride? Sarah asked. Actually, I think I'll walk. She understood. Some moments needed to be lived slowly, felt fully. Michael Thompson walked home through the streets of Phoenix. No longer invisible, never invisible again. The sun painted the sky in colors he felt he was seeing for the first time. Or maybe he was just finally letting himself be seen in their light. His mother would be waiting. They'd talk about medical school, about the future that had suddenly opened wide, about all the invisible people who might now dare to step into their own light. And somewhere in a holding cell, Marcus Winters would be starting his own journey from darkness. Because even the bitter could choose to be better. Even the unseen could choose to shine. The day was ending. But for Michael Thompson, and for all those who had ever felt invisible, something new was just beginning. A horizon where everyone could be seen, really seen, if they chose to step into the light.